Welcome to Studies with Stearman. Join us as we look deeper into the Bible. Strengthen your faith with us, even as we see the day approaching. And now, here's Gary.
Well, last week we looked at the bowls of wrath in the book of Revelation, chapter 16. We went quickly through the bowls of wrath, skipping almost entirely over the fifth one. And I promise you that this week we're going to spend more time on the fifth bowl of wrath. And we need to, because it marks a very important point in the developments of the tribulation period. Bowl number one, if you recall, or vial number one. It's called a vial in the King James because the Greek word is phial, which is transliterated into English as vial. But in fact, a phial is more like a ritual shallow dish called a patera. And it's important to know that because in the ancient world, when priestly duty was done, it was always using one of these shallow bowls. The first vial, if you recall, was poured out, and men had grievous sores appear on their bodies. These sores are specifically aimed at those who have the mark of the beast. And I want to quickly point out that the trumpets and the vials seem to be parts of each other. That is, the trumpet seems to be an initial execution of a curse, and the bowl seems to complete the curse. The first trumpet is blown, and when the first trumpet is blown, you have hail and fire mingled with blood, and the earth burns. First vial, there is a terrible, grievous sore appearing on people. Apparently, there is some kind of a disruption in the atmospheric and the radiation system on Earth that causes that. Second vial is aimed at the sea, which becomes blood. Second trumpet hurled a great mountain into the sea, which turned to blood. The third vial or bowl is a corruption of fresh water. The third trumpet was also a corruption of fresh water when the star called wormwood fell to earth. The fourth bowl is when the sun is disrupted. And there are several times in the book of Revelation when the sun is disrupted, either by being darkened or by being made hot and bright. Fourth vial corresponds to the fourth trumpet, which says, and the fourth angel sounded, and the third part of the sun was smitten, the third part of the moon, the third part of the stars. So the first four bowls of wrath correspond to the first four trumpets. The fifth bowl involves the throne of the beast. And we're going to spend some time on that today. The fifth angel poured out his bowl upon the throne of the beast, and his kingdom was full of darkness, and they gnawed their tongues for pain, and blasphemed the God of heaven because of their pains, their sores, repented not of their deeds. And we find now that when the fifth trumpet sounds, it's aimed directly at the power base of the beast. Where is the throne of the beast? Well, we absolutely know where the throne of the beast is. Let's go back to Daniel, chapter 11. Daniel chapter 11, verse 36. The entire chapter of the book of Daniel is aimed at developing the bloodline, that is, the ancestry and descent of, and the regal or royal authority of the Antichrist. Daniel chapter 11 begins with Persian rule, which is overthrown by Grecian rule, Alexander the Great, Daniel 11:3. And after Daniel, the Ptolemies and the Seleucids battle for control for centuries, which brings us down to 1136 and the end time. And the reason Daniel 11 is in there is to show, without a shadow of a doubt, that the Antichrist is descended from Alexander the Great, the Seleucid dynasty. And most specifically, his general Seleucus and the lineage that came down through Syria. And the king shall do according to his will, shall exalt himself, magnify himself above every god, and speak marvelous things against the God of gods, and shall prosper until the indignation is accomplished. The indignation being the time of judgment or the tribulation. We are looking at that period right now in Revelation chapter 16 and the bowl judgments, because the indignation will be accomplished at the peak of his power. For all that is determined shall be done, neither shall he regard the God of his fathers. In the Hebrew it says the gods, plural, of his fathers, nor the desire of women, nor regard any god, for he shall magnify himself above all. In short, he places himself above conventions and the institutions of society. He literally features himself as a god. He is affiliated with no one but himself. I think that the Antichrist, as he is painted in Scripture, is a man who considers himself above all human need. He doesn't need anybody else. He thinks that he is it. He's the one. Hence this idea of the desire of women, which may have other contexts. It may have contexts that take us back to the old world and the perverted worship. Neither shall he regard any god, for he shall magnify himself above all, but in his estate he shall honor the God of fortresses, or the God of forces, and a God whom his fathers knew not shall he honor with gold, silver, precious stones, and pleasant things. Thus shall he do in the most strongholds with a strange God, whom he shall acknowledge and increase with glory, and he shall cause them to rule over many, and shall divide the land for gain. Now, you could spend a lot of time on verses 38 and 39, but bottom line is that the Antichrist gains his power from evil factions in the heavens, the ones that Paul calls principalities, powers, and rulers of darkness in heavenly places. They are concealed from us, but as we saw in Revelation 9, 10, 11, and 12, in the day of the tribulation, those gods will be out in the open and visible. And by that I mean fallen angels and their outworkings, which would seem almost magical and mystical to human beings, will come out in the open and be openly observed, and the Antichrist will be seen to be empowered by these gods and be the head of these gods. And they will allow that fiction to exist. And it's very clear, as we noted when we were in Revelation 9, that all hell will be allowed to break forth upon the surface of the planet for the purpose of empowering the Antichrist. And people alive in that day will really and truly believe that he has a visible power. He honors the God of forces. A God whom his fathers knew not shall he honor with gold, silver, precious stones. The gods of the Old Testament, in the Babylonian sense, would be Baal. In the Greco-Roman sense, would be Zeus. Gods and goddesses who have been contained for the last few thousand years will be released once again. And it will be like the old world, the old Greco-Roman world, in which the powers of gods will rampage back and forth across the surface of the earth. If we were still on the earth at that time, if we, as the church and indwelt by the Holy Spirit, were still on the earth at that time, I don't think this could happen. It simply wouldn't happen, because we have the power to restrain evil spirits. But as soon as the church is removed, the restraint is removed, and all of this can begin to happen. 39 says, Thus shall he do in the most strongholds with a strange God, whom he shall acknowledge and increase with glory. Who's that God? Well, we know who the God is. It's Apollo. He's mentioned in Revelation chapter 9 as coming up out of the bottomless pit, and we spent quite a bit of time talking about that. Well, who is Apollo? Apollo is the sun god, the son of Zeus. And you may think that all of these gods and goddesses that you hear about in history are just mythological. They're not. They're real people. They were real people on this planet. And they were regarded as real people by the ancients of the earth. Etrurians, the Greeks, the Romans, all regarded these gods as real people and very powerful people who had to be respected. They were called the Immortals, they were called the Titans, they were called the Olympians. All the religions of the ancient world issued forth from those gods and goddesses. In the Middle East, they were Semiramis and Tammuz and Baal. They were Ishtar. They were Isis and Osiris. But they were still gods that were able to rampage across the face of the earth, and they will do it again. Finally, in verse 39, and he shall cause them to rule over many. Who is this mysterious them? Well, it's the gods. The gods and goddesses, called by Paul principalities, powers, rulers of darkness in heavenly places. They are demigods, if you will. And you think, well, how crazy is that? You can't believe a thing like that. It's just pure mythology. I mean, you're talking fairy tales now. It's just about time to get the hook. You've lost your marbles if you're saying that there are going to be gods rampaging back and forth upon the surface of the earth. No, the Bible flatly states that that's going to happen. And it's going to happen for a reason. He shall cause them to rule over many and shall divide the land for gain. They shall divide the land for gain. And the land there is Haaretz. It is the Holy Land. Now you could say it's the whole world, but the context, as you will see, I think demands that this word land in verse 39 is the land of Israel, or the Abrahamic land grant, because it is Haaretz. He shall cause them to rule over many. Verse 40, the time of the end. Now here we are in the tribulation period. At the time of the end, shall the king of the south push at him, the king of the north shall come against him like a whirlwind with chariots and with horsemen, with many ships, and he shall enter into the countries and shall overflow and pass over. He shall enter also into the glorious land, that's Israel, and many countries shall be overthrown, but these shall escape out of his hand, even Edom. Edom is always referred to as an end-time power, which is very odd, because there is no Edom, correct? I don't know of a soul that's carrying an Edomite passport. So who are these? Someday we'll really have to spend a whole hour on who is Edom. So many prophecies of the latter days are dedicated to the destruction of Edom, and you have to believe the Edomites still exist. I do. And I think I may have a clue as to who they are. In fact, next week, week after, we're going to be talking about Babylon. And Babylon and Edom have a lot to do with each other. So, these shall escape out of his hand, even Edom, Moab, and the chief children of Ammon. Now, technically, Edom, Moab, and Ammon would constitute the territory to the east of the Jordan River and to the east of the Dead Sea. But if you go there today, there are very few people, very few cities, a couple of highways, a few backcountry roads, maybe 15,000, 20,000 people. That's it. It's the sticks. There's nobody there. And yet, that place where nobody lives is considered prophetically very important. Verse 42, he shall stretch forth his hand also upon the countries. And these would be the countries that would surround Israel. I think we're talking here about Europe, maybe even America, or what's left of it at that time. And the land of Egypt shall not escape, but he shall have power over treasuries of gold and silver, over all the precious things of Egypt. And the Libyans and the Ethiopians shall be at his steps. So here we're talking about all of North Africa being under his control. But tidings out of the east and out of the north shall trouble him. Why would that be the case? Well, we'll see. In just a moment, we're going to go back and look at the 6th and 7th bowls of wrath, and we will note that the kings of the east are allowed to break forth and to assault the power centers of the Antichrist. He shall have power over the treasures of gold and silver. In other words, he is going to be economically sound and wealthy. And why shouldn't he be? Because he's had control over the global economy with the mark of the beast. If you're controlling the economy, you're going to make sure you have your cut, and he does. Tidings out of the east and the north shall trouble him, therefore he shall go forth with great fury to destroy and utterly to make away many, or sweep away many. And this is the part where we come back to the bowl judgments. He shall plant the tabernacles of his palace between the seas in the glorious holy mountain. Yet he shall come to his end, and none shall help him. At that time shall Michael stand up, the great prince which standeth for the children of thy people, and there shall be a time of trouble such as never was, since there was a nation, even to that same time. At that time thy people shall be delivered, every one that shall be found written in the book. Purpose for the tribulation, as we have stated many times, is to bring Israel back to dominance as the leading world power. Michael stands up. When do we see him standing up in Revelation? We see it in chapter 12. We see Michael, the archangel, fighting against Satan and his angels. Satan is defeated and is evicted, if you will, from heaven. He is sent to the earth. He is grounded in time. Currently, he is not grounded in time. Currently, he can go back and forth through the dimensional wall between earth and heaven. I think that while he's over on the other side, he can sit and do some leisurely planning, because time operates differently on that side of the veil. But in the end time, after he's defeated by Michael, he's going to be cast to the earth, and he's going to be locked into our timeline. And he will know at that point that he has only a short time, as we read in Scripture. Once he's locked into this dimension, having been defeated by Michael, and I have no idea how that works or what that means. I don't know how you get kicked out of that dimension and locked into this one, but it happens to him. And he knows that he has but a short time, and so he begins to behave in a very terrible fashion. And so this is a part of where the throne of the Antichrist is mentioned. So that fifth bowl of wrath is aimed at the throne of the beast, or the Antichrist. We see it right here. We see it again in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2. Now remember, we're looking at the fifth bowl of wrath. Revelation 16:10, and the fifth angel poured out his vial upon the seat of the beast, the throne of the beast. And his kingdom was full of darkness, and they gnawed their tongues for pain, and blasphemed the God of heaven because of their pains and their sores, and repented not of their deeds. So we're asking the question, where is this throne of the beast, the seat of the beast, in Revelation 16:10? One clue comes from Daniel chapter 11. Another clue comes from 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, where Paul is explaining the operation of the kingdom of the beast. Verse 3, 2 Thessalonians 2:3, let no man deceive you by any means, for that day shall not come, except there come the falling away first, and that man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition. And we have so many times expounded on verse 3. It's very much more complicated than it appears to be, but as you know, I believe the falling away that's mentioned there is really the departure of the church. It is preceded by the definite article the. Many of your versions may have it. The King James Version has the indefinite article a. Let no man deceive you by any means, for that day shall not come except there come a falling away first. And I just want to say that the a is not there, as the King James Bible has it. It is the. He, it says in the Greek, he apostasia. He apostasia. The apostasy, some say. But it's not. Because, as has been pointed out, and as we've talked about it so many times, What is said here in very clear language is the departure shall occur. And then the man of sin shall be revealed, the son of perdition. The more I read that, the more I have to agree with several Greek scholars who have made it very clear that there is probably a 95% plus opinion among scholars that the way verse 3 should read is, let no man deceive you by any means, for that day shall not come except there come the departing or departure first, and the man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition. And I want to say a word about the King James Bible. There are a lot of people out there who are King James only people. And as you know, I teach from the King James Bible because by and large I believe it to be the best translation in general. But the King James Bible has some remarkable errors in it. If this mic were connected to a radio transmitter and I were going out there, having said that, I could count on baskets of mail from King James only people who say that the King James Bible is perfect in its every jot and tittle. It is the only inspired version of God's Word. All other versions, including the original Greek and Hebrew, are to be essentially discarded. The King James Bible, by the decree of God, has replaced all of the original autographs as the most dependable translation. Not true. Got to say it. Even though I would earn the wrath of many people in the King James only crowd. For example, you go back to Acts, and you'll find the word Easter in the book of Acts as a translation of Pesach. Well, that's not accurate. It was Passover. And the Greek word for Passover is the Hebrew transliteration of Pesach. So right there in a single term in the book of Acts, you can prove that the King James Bible is not accurate. Well, the King James only people would say it really is Easter. It's not Passover because Easter has replaced Passover. And therefore, by divine decree, the Jacobean translators in 1611 knew that God had replaced Passover with Easter, and therefore it became Easter in the Bible. And the thing wrong with that is that Easter has not replaced Passover, unless you are a replacement theologian, in which case it has. And the Jacobean editors in 1611 followed a replacement theology. What can I say? Back to the text. Verse 3, let no man deceive you by any means, for that day shall not come, except there come the departing first, and that man of sin be revealed, the son of perdition. Now we're talking about the establishment of his throne, which takes us back to the fifth bowl of wrath. Because remember, the fifth bowl of wrath is poured out upon his throne. So we're asking the question, where is his throne? And we see it right here. The son of perdition, the Antichrist, the beast, opposeth and exalteth himself above all that is called God. Now that's exactly what it said in the book of Daniel. He worshipped the God of forces. He worshipped a God whom his fathers knew not. Here he's said to be opposed and exalting himself above everything that is called God or called divine. In other words, the divine Judeo-Christian tradition. We believe in El Elyon, Elohim, Jehovah Shammah, Jehovah Tzidkenu. We believe in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, who said, I am Jehovah. Don't call me anything else. And Jehovah became incarnated in flesh, and in the New Testament, he's known as Jesus. That is what the Antichrist opposes. He opposes and exalts himself above all that is called God, or that is worshipped, so that he, as God, sitteth in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. That's three uses of the word God there. God, God, God. He, in triplicate, refers to himself as God. Why would it be in triplicate there? Well, Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. He, as God, sitteth in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. Do you realize the implication of that? That's staggering, that a human being could stand up in a temple on the Temple Mount And there will be a temple there, because we are given several clues in Scripture that the Antichrist is going to place himself on the Temple Mount, which is currently, by the way, in the hands of the Arab Waqf, which is governed by King Abdullah II of Jordan. Very few people realize it, but the Temple Mount is essentially owned by Jordan, the Hashemite kingdom, and is ruled by the Hashemite kingdom. And King Abdullah sits over there, happy, very wealthy, very much an admired king. He's kind of a westernized guy. He has a beautiful wife who speaks flawless English. He himself was educated in Britain, speaks flawless English. And right now he owns the Temple Mount. It's called the Waqf. He may be some kind of precursor, because when the Antichrist comes to power, he is going to begin to possess that which is now controlled by the Arab Waqf and King Abdullah II. He, as God, sits in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. Remember you not that when I was yet with you, I told you these things. When have we seen this happen before? In the days of Antiochus of 4 Epiphanes, in 164 BC, we saw Antiochus raid the temple, cleaned out the Holy of Holies, put a statue of Zeus in the Holy of Holies with his head on the statue, and demanded the people worship him in the temple of God. What does that sound like? That sounds like exactly what we have here. So Antiochus 4 Epiphanes was a precursor. By the way, did that happen again? Yes, it did. When the Romans destroyed the temple and there was nothing much left but rubble, you could still see where the Holy of Holies was. And a Roman emperor had his head placed upon a statue of Jupiter, which is the Roman equivalent of Zeus, by the way, and placed on what used to be the floor of the Holy of Holies right there. And at the same time, he renamed the city of Jerusalem. It's not going to be Jerusalem anymore. It's going to be called Aelia Capitolina. That is my capital, capital of Rome. And not only that, he changed the name of Israel to Syria Palestina, because the two worst enemies of Israel were Syria, the land of Seleucus, and Palestina was the name of the traditional enemies of the Israelites, the Philistines. The way you say Philistine in Latin is Palestina. If you speak a Semitic language, they're called Philistine, which they are today. They still refer to themselves by that name. So, this that we have in Scripture right here in 2 Thessalonians will be the third occurrence of a similar situation. The first one, 164 BC, Antiochus 4 Epiphanes. The second one was when Rome established a capital there, and the third one will be when somebody, I wonder who that is, stands up, calls himself God. And who is he going to be worshiping? Who is he going to be representing? He's going to be representing the gods. In Revelation 9, they are called the followers of Apollo. Then Paul says in verse 5, remember you not, when I was yet with you, I told you these things? Which to me is a great verse in the Bible. This is Holy Scripture. Verse 5. That's an interesting scripture. I believe that divine writ is eternal. God says, my word shall not pass away. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my word shall not pass away. And it's written right here. And one of the verses in his word says, remember you not that when I was with you, I told you these things? I love that verse. That's a little reminder. Keep looking. I told you all this stuff. Keep looking. And now you know what withholdeth that he might be revealed in his time, for the mystery of iniquity doth already work. Only he who now hinders will continue to hinder until he be taken out of the way. And of course, I believe that's the Holy Spirit. This mystery of iniquity is what? It is the esoteric religion of Babylon. It rises up through history under many different names, but always worshiping the same idea. originally expounded by Semiramis and Tammuz, and later known as the Babylonian mystery religion. The Babylonian mystery religion is everywhere. Why is it called the Babylonian mystery religion? Because it's a mystery, and most people don't even know it exists. But if you know where to look, it's everywhere. We're going to be talking about the fall of Babylon next week as we get into the next chapter of Revelation. And when we do, we're going to, of necessity, go deeply into the Babylonian mystery religion. But here we have an expression of it. When he sits in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God, it is under the auspices, if you will, or the authority of what has been traditionally known as the Babylonian mystery religion. He will be the final exponent of that religion, and he will be crushed. And when he is, the Babylonian mystery religion will be killed at long last. It's been around for thousands of years. And not until the Antichrist is crushed will that religion be crushed. You would be surprised where the Babylonian mystery religion presides. You would really be surprised. Well, back to Revelation and back to the bowl judgments. Looking at the fifth bowl, Revelation 16:10. And the fifth angel poured out his vial upon the throne of the beast, and his kingdom was full of darkness, and they gnawed their tongues for pain, and blasphemed the God of heaven because of their pains and their sores, and repented not of their deeds. I could go farther into this fifth vial, and I'll hint at that without going very far, by asking a question. When we have this bowl of wrath being poured out on the throne of the beast, there is a real vendetta, there's a real horrific judgment leveled against those who have received the mark of the beast. Up here in 16:2, the first vial, and the first went and poured out his vial upon the earth, and there fell a noisome and grievous sore upon the men which had the mark of the beast, and upon them which worshipped his image. Well, we've already seen where his image is. His image is in the temple of God, the Holy of Holies. But the first vial has the effect of creating physical anguish in the bodies of those who have received his mark. Why? What's going on there? It happens again down here in verse 10, the fifth vial. His kingdom is full of darkness. They gnawed their tongues for pain, blasphemed the God of heaven. These are the people who've received the mark. And you have to ask yourself, what is it about that mark? Let's suppose, for example, that you are there in the tribulation, and you have survived so far through war, through famine, pestilence, weather disruptions, meteors falling from heaven, great hailstorms, earthquakes, and so forth, and you're still alive, and you'd be very, very lucky to be alive at this point. Nevertheless, you're looking in garbage cans for your next meal. It's bad. It's really, really bad, and somebody comes along and says, you can get food. Really? Yes, you can get food. Follow me. And you go and you follow that guy to an office of some sort, and you go in there, and it's the office of the Antichrist. I don't know what it'll be called, but it would be one of his district offices. And you can go in there and sign up to get food. And you take a little oath, you get a little mark in your forehead or your hand, and presto, you're on the dole. You get food. I'd do that in a New York minute, wouldn't you? Well, if I hadn't read the Bible, I would do it in a New York minute to get food, because you're living under the worst conditions in the history of the world. So you go in there and you get this little mark. All you have to do is swear allegiance to this person, and then the mark will get you food and whatever else you need, fresh water, maybe a place to live. And maybe there will be several million or 100 million people doing this. But later on, there comes a period of judgment when God pours out bowls of wrath, and you discover your body racked by sores. And you say, what did I do to deserve this? Why, boy, God must really be a rotten God. Because, I was dying of hunger and somebody came along and gave me food, and now I'm getting sores in my body just because I took a mark to get food? Have you ever asked yourself about that? Why would people who took the mark be treated in such a grievous, grievous way? And by the way, they blasphemed the God of heaven because of their pains and their sores, and they repented not of their deeds. And there is the hub of understanding this whole revolving system, because it involves belief. It's not simply taking a mark to get food. It involves a certain belief system that this man is now your provider and protector, and you accept him as your God. In the situation that I presented, the hypothetical where you're out there getting your next meal out of a garbage can, unless you get the mark of the beast, wouldn't you take the mark of the beast? And while you were taking it, wouldn't you say, I swear to worship him as my Lord and my God? Well, I'm pretty hungry. And by the way, maybe I'll get some free medical care out of the deal. I don't know. Maybe an apartment. All I have to do is just swear allegiance to this God. And by the way, by that time, they will know his name, which we only know numerically now as 636. But at that time, they'll know his actual name, and they'll probably be required to profess publicly a belief that that man, Mr. X, is God. And he is my protector and my provider, and I will follow him to the ends of the earth. So now if you were eating out of a garbage can and somebody came along and said, I can show you where to get food, would you go? Knowing what you do now, you certainly would not, right? You'd go hungry. You'd starve to death rather than worship another God. But there's something more to taking the mark than just getting a mark. In fact, it has been suggested in several books by people who have really studied the mark that the mark may actually effect a physical change in the one who receives it. I don't know that that's true, but it may. It's certainly true when you receive Christ. You're a new creature. You're born again. I'm not the same person I was before I received Christ. Something in me has changed. Likewise, if I receive the Antichrist, the indications are that something changes, and that from that point on, you're not human in the sense that we think of humanity now. And you are liable and eligible for that kind of punishment which formerly was meted out only by those who offended heaven in a mighty way. And I'm talking about the Nephilim, the Rephaim, the fallen angels, the demons, non-human creatures who received the wrath of God. And I'm saying that people who receive the mark are going to be placed in that same category. They are as eligible to receive the wrath of God as any creature who ever fell from heaven, unredeemed. In fact, the Bible suggests that those who receive the mark are exactly like the demons who cannot be redeemed. Isaiah 26, remember, says, they are dead. They are the Rephaim. They shall not rise, neither can they receive resurrection. In other words, there's no redemption for a devil. And there's no redemption for someone who takes the mark of the beast. I'll go into the subject that far and stop. And if you want to go the rest of the way, that's fine. They blaspheme the God of heaven because of their pains and their sores, and they repented not of their evil deeds. Now, last week we mentioned that these 7 bowls divide up as the first 4 being sort of geophysical in nature. They are a curse upon the earth. The 5th one is transitional. It speaks of the throne of the Antichrist. The 6th and the 7th are political. And let's look at the 6th one now, after having looked at the seat or the throne of the beast. And by the way, we didn't spend as much time as we could have on verse 10 because there's a lot more, but in respect to time, I'm just going to go ahead and move along to the sixth bowl of wrath. Verse 12. The sixth angel poured out his vial upon the great river Euphrates. The water thereof was dried up, the way of the kings of the east might be prepared. And I saw three unclean spirits like frogs come out of the mouth of the dragon, mouth of the beast, mouth of the false prophet, for they are the spirits of devils, working miracles, which go forth unto the kings of the earth, the whole world, to gather them to the battle of that great day of God Almighty. There is an interjection by the Lord. Behold, I come as the thief. Blessed is he that watcheth and keepeth his garments, lest he walk naked, and they see his shame. And he gathered them together into a place called the Hebrew tongue Armageddon. Now, it's interesting that if you go back to the sixth trumpet, you also read about the river Euphrates. The sixth trumpet is in Revelation 9:13. The sixth angel sounded. I heard a voice from the four horns of the golden altar, which is before God, saying to the sixth angel, which had the trumpet, Loose the four angels which are bound in the great river Euphrates. And the four angels were loosed, which were prepared for an hour, and a day, and a month, and a year, for to slay the third part of men. So at this point, you have a loosing of four evil angels who are locked in the river Euphrates. And how do you lock an angel in a river? If you find the answer to that, let me know, will you please? I don't know. But you can. You can bind an evil fallen angel into a river. What is it about the river Euphrates, by the way? The river Euphrates is a historical boundary. Going back to the days of Abraham, you were either on that side of the river or you were on this side of the river. Abraham started his life on that side of the river, and God said, I want you to cross the river, and I'm going to show you a land, and I want you to go and live in that land. Give everything up that you now have. You go to a place that I will show you, and to do so, you're going to have to cross the river. And by the way, that's where the Jews got their first designation. They became called Hebrews when they crossed the river. Eviru, meaning to come to this side of the river. So the river Euphrates is kind of a spiritual boundary. You go to that side, and it represents one thing. It represents Babylonianism. You come to this side of the river, it represents redemption in the land of Israel. And there are angels bound in that river right now. And those angels are prepared for an hour, a day, a month, and a year to slay the third part of man. One of these days, those angels will be let loose, and they will do a work so horrific that you hesitate even to talk about it. If you saw that, if you saw the things that are going to happen in the tribulation, I guarantee you would wish that you had not seen them. And I mean that with all of my heart. You'd say, please, God, wipe that vision out of my head. I don't want to see that. It's going to be bad. Sixth trumpet, sixth vial. The sixth angel poured out his vial on the great river Euphrates, and the water was dried up. The angels have already been released out of the river at this point, that the way of the kings of the east might be prepared. And I saw three unclean spirits like frogs. Come out of the mouth of the dragon, beast, out of the mouth of the false prophet. An unclean spirit like a frog come out of the mouth of the dragon, the beast, the false prophet. What's a dragon? A dragon is a reptile. It's a scaly reptile with a weird forked tongue, and a tail, a spiky tail, and legs and funny-looking wings and so forth, and flies around, and is not a mythological creature. He's a real creature. He's as real as my index finger is real. And he's a reptile. He's the king of the reptiles. Always has been the king of the reptiles. As far as I know, he's always going to be the king of the reptiles, although his kingdom is going to be diminished severely. And what are frogs? Reptiles. I don't like frogs very much. I really don't. I mean, I know they have a function. They serve a purpose in nature, and sometimes they sing nicely. But they're kind of schmucky, yucky, wet reptiles. And what a good image for a demon. A green frog. What an image for a demon. It's not that easy being green. I saw 3 unclean spirits like frogs come out of the mouth of the dragon, out of the mouth of the beast, out of the mouth of the false prophet. Remember back in Revelation 13, the serpent, that is the dragon, that is the beast, is upheld by the false prophet, who points to the dragon and says, worship him, worship the beast. And the spirit of the Antichrist system is triune, just like the spirit of the system of God. I saw 3 unclean spirits like frogs come out of the mouth of the dragon, out of the mouth of the beast, out of the mouth of the false prophet, for they are the spirits of devils. What do devils look like? I don't think devils are very pretty creatures. I know that they are always depicted in art as being kind of ugly, reptilian, scaly, evil eyes. You know what I'm saying. They're not nice guys. And when John saw them, and I think that he did literally see this happening, he described these devils as frog-like, reptilian. And they are now given the power to go to the kings of the earth and of the whole world. The earth speaks of the geophysical globe. The world speaks of the political system. They're free to go forth to the kings of the earth and of the whole world to gather them to the battle of that great day of God Almighty. And here we have now the statement of how the battle of Armageddon begins to come to pass. Behold, says Jesus, I come as a thief. Now, this tells us that we're getting close to the end of the tribulation. The Lord is warning whoever is alive to hear this, that the day is coming very quickly. Blessed is he that watcheth. There will be people alive in that day who are watching for the coming of the true Messiah. They will be few and far between, and they will be persecuted, as we've already seen in Revelation 12. But they will be watching. And Jesus says, keep yourself. You don't want to be seen running around naked, that is, without your righteous garments covering you up. Ever have one of those nightmares, where you're in a bus station with about 200 people and you look down and notice you don't have any clothes on? That's a nightmare. That's a nightmare. But it's exactly what Jesus is talking about here. He gathered them together into a place called in the Hebrew tongue Armageddon. Armageddon is the valley of Jezreel. Prophet Hosea has a whole discourse on the day of battle in the valley of Jezreel. Mount Carmel in Israel, just south of Haifa, overlooks the valley of Jezreel, which extends from Carmel all the way over to just south the Sea of Galilee, all the way to the River Jordan. And Armageddon is a series of campaigns in which the armies of the earth are progressively drawn and staged before they march to battle. So what we have here is a staging for battle. And we're going to look at this next week to see how the battle is staged in steps, in progressive steps, before an actual invasion occurs. This battle staging is similar to what we saw in World War II, where before United States and British troops crossed the English Channel and went to Europe to wipe out the Germans, they staged in England. And they staged in 2 or 3 other places secretly until the time of D-Day. Well, we've got here then a staging for battle. He gathered them together into a place called in the Hebrew tongue Har Magedon, the Mount of Megiddo, which is the mountain that overlooks the valley of Jezreel. Now, we've got kind of a setup here to go into the seventh vial, and the seventh vial involves Babylon. So next week we're going to broach the subject of Babylon, and believe me, this is a complicated subject. I've got 15, 20 different books on Revelation, maybe more. And those 15 or 20 books that I have offer 15 or 20 different opinions on who, what, and where Babylon is. And if you've done any reading, you know what I'm talking about. And so we're going to try to unscramble this omelet next week concerning the identity of Babylon and the situation in which Babylon falls. And this is going to take a while. Verse 17, the seventh angel poured out his vial into the air, and there came a voice out of the temple of heaven from the throne saying, "It is done." And I want to, once again, as we did last week, stop here and expound on this, and this will be all we have time for today. When it says, "it is done," the Greek word that's used there is gegone, from the Greek verb ginomai, which means to come into being, or to happen, or to be brought into existence, or to be finalized. That's what ginomai means. Here, the verb tense should be read, "it has happened," or "it has come into being." Or, the best reading that I've seen, the Kittle's Greek lexicon, Gerhard Kittel said, the best translation for gegone is, "it has finally happened!" Exclamation point. Bang. And that's the translation that I prefer. The seventh angel poured out his vial into the air, and there came a voice out of the temple of heaven from the throne saying, "It has finally happened." Here it is. This is it. What has finally happened? This point, verse 17, and you can put a note in your margin, marks the absolute and utter end of the tribulation period. When this happens, this is the last thing that happens, virtually the very last thing that happens in the 7-year tribulation. And you say, well, wait a minute, we still got some more chapters to read. But those chapters simply describe what's happening within the sphere of this seventh bowl of wrath, marked, "it has happened." What has happened? The end of the tribulation has happened. And by the way, the whole righteous world has been waiting for millennia for this to happen. It's what the whole Bible is about. And everybody is saying, "Even come soon, Lord Jesus. How long, O Lord? Judge this world, Lord. We are your followers. We want you to step out of the heavens and do what's right." And people have been saying that for thousands of years. And the Jews have been praying that prayer for thousands of years. But finally, in Revelation 16:17, it has happened.